Hey everybody, we're back and we're still learning about cells. It's 2021 and it's time to learn some new stuff about cells. And today we're going to learn about how they divide and why they divide. And so let's go ahead and present. So we've got a couple different learning targets that we're going to touch on today. The big idea is that cells divide into more cells. So when a cell splits in half and turns into multiple cells, we call this cell division. Now we're going to get into the reasons why today. And also we want to introduce a new term, which is called mitosis. Mitosis is the most common form of cell division. And for the most part, uh, everything that we look at today is going to be a version of mitosis. So it's pretty simple. You're looking at one cell splitting in half, and then you got two cells. Um, Before it can split in half, it does need to copy all of its genetic information. So the cells, have their DNA, the chromosomes, the nucleus with all of that important information that's controlling the cell. But once it has that and it goes through that process, then the cell can divide and make two cells. Now, why? Why two cells? Well, different types of organisms split and do cell division for different reasons. We're going to look at both unicellular and multicellular. Let's start with unicellular because they're simple. Unicellular organisms, when they split in half, they're reproducing. We talked about this in trimester 1. This is called asexual reproduction, where you've got one cell, it copies all of its DNA. So now we've got two bundles of DNA here. And then we move over and they start to move apart. They split in half. Free knowledge, that's called cytokinesis. And then eventually we have two identical cells to the original cell. This is how something like a bacteria can make many bacteria. One becomes two, two becomes four, four becomes eight, and they're all exact copies of the one that started splitting. And so the main purpose that unicellular organisms, since that one cell has to do everything, that cell has to do the moving, it has to, get food, it has to, do all of the, sensing, responding to its environment. And when it's time to reproduce, it just splits in half and you get two new, what are called daughter cells. Not that a unicellular organism is male or female, but that's what they're called. Now, let's move on to multicellular organisms. Multicellular organisms have three main purposes for having cell division. One is growth, the second is development, and the third is repair. We'll look at each of these separately. Let's start with growth. Now, we can look at the pictures of these two hippos. Clearly, adorable as it is, the one on the left, the baby, is a lot smaller than the giant hippo on the right. But it's not because its cells are smaller. It's because it has less cells. All things, as they grow and get bigger, instead of having their cells might get a little bigger from time to time, but then those cells eventually won't work very good if they get too big. And so they need to split, and you need more cells. So organisms that are bigger have gone through cell division more, and that's how they get larger. So, when you were a baby, you had less cells than you have now. You've grown. We're very proud of you. You were really little and now you're so big. That's what we say, right? So, that's great. But it's only because your cells have gone through cell division and now you have more of them. The second reason that we go through cell division is we can be more complex. We consider this concept to be development. Just as a newborn baby, they don't see very good. In fact, they can barely see in front of their face. But as they get older and get bigger, they also get more complex and they start to get rods and cones in the back of their eyes and they start to be able to see. Um, Most of you are now in your becoming teenagers and you're going through puberty. Awkward, right? But you're developing, you're changing. You've got hormones going through your body. And you're like, yeah, I know it's a mess. Well, don't worry. Middle school that's a tough time, but you'll get through it. But development is because we have certain cells that have special jobs. Unicellular organisms, they only have one cell. So that one cell needs to kind of do everything. And that's why they have to stay really simple. Multicellular organisms can assign certain cells to do certain jobs. So we want to stay healthy and not be sick. We can have white blood cells, like this immune cell here, fight off diseases. That's its only job. It doesn't do very good at carrying oxygen. That's the job of the red blood cell over here. Um, you know, we want the red blood cells don't help you move. That's the muscle cell's job. And the muscle cell doesn't help you send electrical messages through your body. That's the job of a nerve cell. And so when you have lots of cells, you can cause some of them to have certain jobs, and other cells can have other specialized jobs, and that makes you more complex. In humans, we have one base type of cell, it's called a stem cell. And stem cells are cells that don't have specific jobs yet. Then later, when they copy and divide, they can turn into a specialized cell, like a skin cell or a bone cell or a nerve cell. And so specialized cells allow us to be more complex. The last reason that we need our cells to divide is for repair. It's a tough world out there. Sometimes you get a cut, sometimes you get a scrape, sometimes certain cells will just wear out. And so you need to replace cells. The cells on the palm of your hand get replaced like every 3 days. You're touching things, you're grabbing things, and it's all that friction on your hand causes those skin cells to get worn out pretty quickly. Whereas other cells that are not as in contact with things, um, they can last a lot longer before they need to be replaced. So things like red blood cell lasts for about 2 weeks. The skin on the middle of your back probably lasts 2 to 3 weeks. Uh, Bone cells can last for years. And so these are, you've got in your DNA, in your chromosomes, in your nucleus, you've got codes that tell you how often those cells need to replicate and how they need to, go through cell division to replace themselves. So I'll let you enjoy this little cartoon. And then I want to point out, if you go and open the slideshow up, there's a movie. It does a really cool job of showing how um, it's a salamander or a newt that's trying to form. And it starts off in the movie with one cell, and you can see the cell division happening. And then eventually it gets out of its egg cell or egg sac and bursts out as kind of like frogs where they have tadpoles. It's not fully formed yet, but you can see how everything starts with one cell after, and that's called a zygote, where one egg and one sperm cell have combined, and then how cells divide. And you can actually see how partway through how they start to specialize and form things like the spinal cord and the heart and the eye and the skin. And so that's pretty cool to watch too. I'll let you go back and watch that online. Um, so hopefully this made sense, and good luck.